Rosalind Harris was juggling two waitressing jobs just to stay afloat and cover her college tuition. On one of the busiest weekends of the year, she was on shift at Bus Boys and Poets, a Washington restaurant known for its artsy, relaxed vibe and ties to activists, creatives, and thinkers. That's when a group of Texan men walked in, their bright red hats standing out sharply in a place like that. Right away, Rosalind felt uneasy. At 25, she'd dealt with some tough situations before, but this group gave her a different kind of worry. She hoped they weren't there to stir up any issues, for her or the other folks dining that day. The hats made her nervous, and honestly, she was afraid of how things might go. But after a few moments, she realized maybe she had judged them too fast. She couldn't hide her uneasiness, though. Still, what she ended up seeing on the table later completely caught her off guard. She just stood there, stunned. Rosalind is a trained dancer, and her job at the restaurant is just a stepping stone to help her get through school. She works hard and does her best to keep things smooth. The last thing she needed that day was any kind of confrontation. That particular weekend was already full of tension. It was the weekend of two major events in D.C., the inauguration of the 45th President, Donald Trump, and the Women's March. Ironically, both Rosalind and the men in red hats had been to a march that weekend, but on opposite sides. The men had come for the inauguration, while Rosalind had attended the Women's March. She wasn't a Trump supporter by any means, so when she saw them walk in wearing those MAGA hats, she immediately felt a wall go up. It felt like they were on opposite teams, and now they were in her space. As Jason and his group stepped into Bus Boys and Poets, the whole room seemed to pause. People turned to look, including Rosalind. She instantly made two guesses about them. One, they were from out of town, and two, they were here for the inauguration. It seemed pretty clear they had no clue what kind of place they'd walked into. Their vibe just didn't fit, and it looked like they were in for a surprise. One of the problems with how things are these days in politics is that people tend to make a ton of assumptions about you as soon as they find out who you support. When someone spots a Trump supporter, the reaction is often instant. People might think they're mean, close-minded, or even part of something extreme. But not everyone wearing a MAGA hat fits that mold. Jason White and his friends had flown in from Texas to be part of the celebrations after the election. They were excited about the results and wanted to be there in person. Jason felt it was important to support the president. He's 37, a family guy, and a dentist with a tight group of friends back home. Nothing unusual, just a regular guy living a regular life. Truthfully, the bright red hats were the first thing anyone in the restaurant noticed. They really stood out in a place like that. Rosalind didn't mention anything about them, but Jason quietly leaned over to his friends and suggested they take the hats off during lunch. He didn't want to cause any tension. "I told my friend I'd take off your hat. We're not here to make a statement. We just want to eat lunch," Jason said later. While they were settling in, Jason started looking around and asked Rosalind about the bookstore section in the restaurant. She gladly explained it was pretty clear these guys hadn't been to a spot like this before. She shared that Bus Boys and Poets was named after Langston Hughes, a well-known African-American poet and writer. He helped shape jazz poetry and was a huge figure in the cultural and political movements of his time. After taking their order, Rosalind left the men to enjoy their food, assuming that was the end of it. A simple lunch, nothing more. About an hour later, the group got up to leave. They gave her a wave and a quick thank you on their way out. Rosalind wished she'd had the chance to say a proper goodbye, but when she returned to their table to clean up and grab the check, something stopped her. The paper was covered in writing. At first, it just looked like random scribbles, until she looked again and realized what it really was. Rosalind picked up the note and started to read. Just a few words in, she realized it was written directly to her. "We may come from different backgrounds and see things differently," Jason had written, But if more people shared a smile and kindness like yours, our country could come together as one. Not race, not gender, just American. God bless." Reading it, Rosalind felt a genuine wave of emotion. It really struck her how something as simple as a smile could shift someone's whole perspective. Then her eyes moved down to the receipt. Their meal had cost $72.60, but to her shock, they had left a $450 tip. What made it even more surprising was that Jason hadn't told his friends. It wasn't something they'd planned together, it was just a thoughtful, in-the-moment decision. The kind words and generous tip hit Rosalind hard. Not only were they deeply touching, but they couldn't have come at a better time. She'd just taken on extra shifts after needing to move apartments, and she wasn't even sure she'd be able to cover the upfront costs. Rosalind admitted later that maybe she had jumped to conclusions too quickly. The men didn't just leave a tip. They left her with something to think about. It reminded her that a lot of people in this country still want to find common ground, no matter how different their views might be. Even though neither Rosalind nor Jason posted anything about what happened, a coworker snapped a photo of the receipt and shared it on Twitter. The story spread quickly. Before long, it had reached thousands, then millions. People everywhere were talking about the unexpected kindness between two strangers who saw the world differently. During one interview, Rosalind surprised Jason by calling him over FaceTime. It was the first time they'd spoken since that day at Busboys and Poets. It gave them a chance to reconnect and reflect on everything that had happened since. A few weeks later, Rosalind reached out again. They continued talking and even dove into their political differences, curious to understand each other better. Over time, they had some honest conversations, sometimes even tough ones. Both were clearly passionate about what they believed, but they also saw the value in listening. The experience reminded them both that disagreement doesn't have to lead to division. Respect and kindness still go a long way. After their disagreement, Rosalind and Jason decided to take some time apart. They both needed space to think about whether their differences were something they could truly work through. A few weeks later, they met up again to talk things over face to face. They had a long, honest conversation. Both of them admitted that despite everything, they still cared about the connection they had built. Even with their different views, there was something meaningful about how they had challenged and learned from each other. It wasn't something easily found with people who always agreed with you. As they reconnected, Rosalind and Jason made a choice, not to ignore their differences, but to grow from them. They committed to keeping their conversations open and respectful, even when things got tough. With time, their mutual respect deepened. They realized that building understanding across political lines wasn't just possible, it was necessary. What mattered more was how they treated each other, how they listened, and how they stayed grounded in shared values like kindness and honesty. Thanks for following this story to the end. If it moved you, inspired you, or gave you something to think about, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need a little reminder that connection is still possible, even when we don't see eye to eye.